For today's lab, we're going to be doing a quantitative analysis versus qualitative analysis of a series circuit. So in other words, we'll be actually taking real measurements with resistors and doing calculations and so forth. And through this process, we'll discover the rules for how we analyze series circuits. So today we'll be starting with the power supply, digital multimeter, two 10 ohm resistors, a 5 ohm, and a 20 ohm. So to start with, we're just going to take measurements on one 10 ohm resistor. This we've done before in the Ohm's Law lab. So in this investigation, we'll turn on the power supply, turn the currents to the maximum, and then adjust your voltage so you're around 5 volts. It says don't exceed 5 volts, but just about anything around 5 volts is good. Once you've established 5 volts, we don't have to touch this the rest of the investigation. Right, so plug in your circuit. This is the first part, and measure your voltage. Whoop. Overload, so what am I getting? There we go, 5.01 volts. Wow, right on. All right, so 5.01 volts, record that in your data table. Now we want to measure the current. So if you recall, to measure current, what do we have to do? Move our meter over to current. Flip this terminal over here to current. We need to disconnect something in the circuit. And then run the current. Whoopsies. All right. It's not behaving. Well, we'll use this one. Run the current through the meter. There we go, 0.47 amps, 0.46 amps. All right, record that in your data table and go on to the next step. In the next step, what we'll be doing is taking measurements for series circuits. So we hook our 10 back up. Then we get out another 10, or depending on what order you do this in, you can use the 20 next, or you can use the 5 next, based on what is available to you. All right, so we're going to go into the 10 ohm, and then from the 10 ohm, we're going to go into the next 10 ohm. All right, then out of the 10 ohm, now reverse those, out of the 10 ohm and back to the power supply. All right, so if you look at my circuit, I come out of the power supply, into one 10 ohm resistor, out of the 10 ohm resistor, back to another 10 ohm resistor, and then back to the power supply. So that's my end. All right, so there's a few different voltage readings that we have to do. All right, the lab shows to do voltage 1, 2. So voltage 1, 2, I switch all the way back to voltage, is going to be the two leads that hook up to the power supply. So voltage 1, 2 is I put the red going into the red coming from the power supply, and the black where it goes back to the power supply. Right there. So there's my voltage reading, 1, 2. That's the whole circuit. So if you notice, my meter goes across from the beginning of one 10 ohm to the end of the other 10 ohm. Okay, that's voltage 1, 2. Now, voltage on resistor 1 is just going to be at resistor 1. So I measure resistor 1's voltage. There we go. And resistor voltage 2 is going to be the voltage at resistor 2. So I measure voltage 2. All right, so the voltage measurements aren't all that difficult. The current measurements, however, can be a little bit more difficult. So let's go through and reset our multimeter to current. So we're set to current. And what's next? What we want to do is measure current 1. So current 1 shows us coming out of the power supply. So it looks more like, I'll try to put these in order of the picture. All right. Oh, they're a little off screen. Let's move that one up here. There we go. So that's pretty much what you show in the diagram under part 6. So the first one, we want to measure the current right here. All right. And that's going to be A12. So to do that, we just disconnect right there. And we reconnect the power supply to or the meter to what we disconnected. So we'll go like this. Whoopsies. Hook the meter there. All right, so there's current 1, 2. Reconnect everything. In the diagram, current 2 is shown in the middle, so we can disconnect this and measure here to here. There's current 2. And then for current 1, we can disconnect right here and measure from there to there with the meter. All right? So that's your currents. All right, so that sums up all the measurements that you have to take. So we'll repeat this a couple times. So each time resistor 1, which is here, will be a 10 ohm, but in the other sections we will replace the 10 ohm with a 5. So I'll have a 10 and a 5. All right, so that includes the step with just 1 or 2 resistors, one being a 10 and another one being a 10. In other parts, we might have a 10 and a 5, or possibly a 10 and a 20. All right, as always, remember when you're finished with your lab, turn off your multimeter, put all the cables and the meter back in the box, and turn off your power supply. Return the resistors to the front of the room where the resistors belong.